Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Investor's Source, your source of all wealth and wisdom. We've got with us today Scott Cobb, an investor in Northern Colorado, who we've worked with in the past. It's been a little while, but great to have Scott with us today to share his experience and knowledge and expertise with a subject that's becoming more in the public right now, which is ADUs, or accessory dwelling units, as cities look to address their housing shortages and affordable housing. A lot of them are considering accessory dwelling units, and Scott has experience with that. So we welcome you, Scott. Thanks for being on. And just want to start off by asking you, maybe give us a little bit of your background with real estate and what you've been doing lately.
Well, I started in the 90s listening to different guys that were having seminars, and I was very interested. I think my first rental property was probably in 2002. And I grew that portfolio for a while, went through a lot of learning curves, lost everything I owned in 2008 and started over again immediately. And now we've built up another portfolio, and we do construction and we do investment properties. We're buy and hold guys. We've done flips. Not necessarily one of the things I try to focus on, but I've done plenty of them. So I guess we look at mainly multifamily now, storage units, and then fixer-uppers, whether it may be like a combination commercial and a multifamily. So the multi-use properties, those are good. They're kind of becoming more of a thing too. They're more in demand, and cities are allowing them more so, like they used to back in the days when they used to have them, and then they kind of went away, and now they're coming back.
Okay. Nice. And you, before we started this, you mentioned to me you're doing an interesting project right now up in Montana, kind of like a little side work. Do you maybe give us a brief description of what you're doing up there?
Yeah, it's the Department of Transportation for one of the tribes. And so we're putting that together. It's a 12,500 square foot steel building. It's got office space, and the winter's coming, so we're in a hurry.
I'd say. Very nice. Cool. Maybe give us some background as well that you have with ADUs. Have you done some ADUs? And when I talk about ADUs, I'm talking about, most people think about detached units, which are the classic definition of an ADU, but I look at them also as any time we're adding square footage to a property, either with an addition or a basement finish, or finishing a garage or building above a garage, popping a top. Those can all be considered ADUs. So what kind of background do you have with ADUs, Scott?
I'd say I have a pretty good experience with that. I will say, to start off with the properties we have, we're always looking how we can make them make more money. And this is one of the ways that we do. So if you have a detached, you have X amount of cost per square foot. If you have attached or something that you're developing empty space into usable space, whether it be a basement or just an extra room for it to rent, you're turning more money for the property. So ultimately what an investor is looking to do is, how much money do I have to put into it, and how much am I going to get back, and how long is it going to take me to make up my money? So we do those numbers. If we're leveraging, obviously we take an approach. We can run a pro forma, see what our return is. If you're doing it out of pocket, lots of times rule of thumb is somewhere between 2 and 3 years return on your money if you're doing some kind of add or modification. So maybe more so on so some of the buildings that I've had, which I've had multi-use, and we have found extra space or found a different way to make them make more money. So we will look at them, and if we have, like I said, an empty space, we could turn it into a studio maybe. We took once one office space that was making roughly $200 to $275 a month, made a studio out of it, and now we're taking in $1150 a month. So
Wow.
it's a drastic difference, and we didn't have to do much to it. Already had a bathroom in it, but the return on it was phenomenal.
Right.
So, that's one of the examples. Another thing to answer your question, a lot of the jurisdictions they're going down to, everything's based on parking. So depending on where you're at, if you're doing an ADU in your backyard, that's one thing, they're not worried about parking. But if you're adding to a multifamily complex, the affordable housing is going down. Some of it is going down to zero parking per affordable unit, and that's in Denver. Different jurisdictions are approaching it differently. Boulder County, Longmont was one of them that did. They reduced their parking spaces that were required to allow more density in theirs in November of 18. And so we were able to build more units on one of the apartment complexes we built up there. So.
Cool. And so you talking about the cities and some of them relaxing parking requirements and things. Have you found that general trend is going on throughout where you invest, which I think is mostly northern Colorado, but probably down to Denver? Are you finding cities are relaxing their requirements? And would you say this is a good time for investors to be considering an ADU?
I would say absolutely yes, because given what's going on with the market right now, that's probably your best investment to put your money toward to get your best return. Because especially if you have a garage and you can make an ADU above it, and the city will allow it, which most of them are on board for this. We even have inspectors suggesting it to us when we're having inspections, which is I thought that was odd, but yes, we've had that, and we are mainly in northern Colorado. But I would highly suggest, whether it's a basement with walkout or something to turn more money, or to add more space above your garage, you're going to get a good return on your money. Yes.
And yeah, and if cities are making it easier, which has been an issue for a long time, that cities haven't always been very favorable towards ADUs, and now they are, that certainly would make the whole process easier. Are you finding the red tape is going down, or is there still a lot of red tape with ADUs?
I think it depends on what jurisdiction you're working in. Some are easier than others. Some jurisdictions are difficult regardless. It doesn't make a difference whether it's an ADU or what. It's just they have either they're slow at moving. Denver's terrible. We don't have any investment properties in Denver, but we help other people with investment properties in Denver. Most of our stuff is up north, but we do talk to a lot of the cities that are promoting us to create more living space. They're definitely on board.
That's great. I guess not to tattle, but which cities are you finding are the easier ones to work with, and which ones? You said Denver is a tough one. I'm assuming Boulder is like that as well.
Weld County's easier.
Okay.
Larimer County is a little bit tougher. Fort Collins is a little bit tougher. Loveland is easier to work with. We've got a job in Milliken. They are okay. They're not expedient, but they're definitely looking for more housing because they need it. And I think I'd say the difficult ones might be probably the ones in the metro area, really.
Right.
But
that's what you'd expect. But I think even they are loosening up, and they're all looking for ways to increase density. And so I'm sure they're at least considering in their city councils ways to make the process easier, because that's the big push right now. So you mentioned the ROI, of course, is huge overriding factor of whether or not to add an ADU to your property. Can you think of any other factors or checklists that you go through when you're deciding whether to add one? You said the time frame of holding it a couple of years. Of course, you need the funds to do it.
Right.
Can you think of anything else that you kind of think through?
Well, I do. We go through a whole process of when we find a property. We want to make sure if we're going to a certain city, we want to see what our major employers are, if they're in population growth or not growing. Obviously, most of Colorado is in a good spot. I don't know of anything that's losing population, but we do want to make sure that we have anchor employers and it's on a good. We have good schools in the area that we're trying to buy. We do look at a lot of the economic factors when we make those decisions. We do run a pro forma. We'll check it. We'll run it full length with our final product and what kind of a financing we're up against, and then our returns, cash on cash and ROI and the whole works. So we have a whole spreadsheet that we work with, and we'll put our cost of the project down and our time to do it, our holding costs, and then when we get to the end, then we do all of those returns and we make a decision.
And are you finding it? I mean, hopefully you have some of your own cash to work with, but when you're having to take out loans to build an ADU or finish a basement, rates are high now. Is it harder to make those numbers work now? Or is it still generally working out?
It's tougher, but it's all your money's in your buy. So if you already own the property and you're adding, then how are you financing that? If you can get a second on it and carry it, maybe the second is at a higher interest rate and your first is a lower, then that would be a good situation. If you're buying the property, then it's all in the buy, and things are starting to adjust, and rates of rent still seem to be pretty stable. They haven't come down as far as I know for most part. But I think that if I were making a decision on an investment, I think that would be one of the ones that'd be an easy yes. Just an an ADU is definitely beneficial, because most of the time, especially if it's in the same structure that you're working with. We just took a house and it was in a so one of the things I would say, look for properties that are in an area that's zoned, that you can have either a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex, and you have a single family residence, but people don't even sometimes realize that it's zoned for more uses. You can make a lot of money by going and finding those properties and then adding or splitting, because if you have a single family residence, you rent it to one person, say your rent is $2,000 a month, and then instead you turn it into a duplex or an over under, you're renting both units, you might make $3,000 a month, and you didn't really have to do much difference. So your time spent, your money spent, and your return is usually really good.
Right. I'm sure it's not cheap to build ADUs, especially these days, but it's not cheap to buy a whole land parcel either. And I guess that's where you're saving the most, is you don't have to repurchase extra land that's already sitting there.
Right. So now with the market turning like it is, people are pulling back from doing developments, and now we're going after rehabs, because the market adjusts. And just like we had it before, where it was cheaper to buy a used property and rehab it and make money on it than it was to develop one. And then we went through the cycle where you could go out and develop a property and make a lot of money on it. And the cost of that was as even enough with what a used property was that you could make more money developing. And now we're back to the other way around. So now we're back to buying used. Is better to rehab that as opposed to develop.
Very interesting. I think most people, even homeowners and investors as well, the most basic decision with ADUs is, do I finish my basement? And I think a lot of people have a lot of confusion about, is it worth it? If I'm a flipper, should I finish my basement and flip it? I'm going to get all that extra value out of it. What is your approach to a plain old basement finish?
Well, so depending on how you finish it, I'd say, and who's finishing it and how you set it up, you're somewhere between $50 and $100 a square foot. If you're doing a brand new, something like an ADU standalone in your back of your property, you might be at $200 to maybe $250 a square foot. So your return on your money is far better with a basement if you're going to rent it. If you have 1,500 square feet and it costs you $75 a square foot, you can do the math as opposed to $200 or $250 a square foot to get a standalone property that you can rent.
What about a flipper? Do you think it's worth it for a flipper to say, hey, I'm going to make an extra 50 grand by finishing the basement? What's your approach to that if you're going to flip property?
There's a lot of different approaches that I would take on there. Is, let's say that I find a ranch with a basement and it only has 2 bedrooms upstairs. 3 bedrooms sell better. And so you're going to have more demand if you're going to sell it to a family to add another at least 1 or 2 bedrooms in the basement. I think that your cost per square foot to me, it's a no-brainer to go on in and finish the basement and flip it. You already have the structure, everything's there. If you just finish it out, and if he or she is doing that work, they can probably save a lot of money and make it probably somewhere around $50 a square foot and get a good return on it.
Okay. Also, I know with some of my rentals, some of them I finished, some of them I didn't. The ones that I really liked were ones that had some already, they had already been started, like the plumbing was roughed in, and that gave me some leverage to, they're already there. Let's go for those. And the ones that didn't really have anything, including any walls finished, I decided that maybe that wasn't the best use of my capital. But I've had mine for a while. Probably if I finished the ones I didn't, it would have been a good investment over these many years. So a lot of factors go into it, but I hear you. In general, if you're looking to rent or even to flip, if it's going to make the house more sellable, there's oftentimes it's worth it to you, even if it's a short-term proposition. Any other advice you can give to investors when looking at building an ADU or adding a pot or popping the top to a house, or anything else you can think of that would help our investors in their ADU decisions?
Maybe just another thought to do a takeoff with what you were saying. You said you had found a property that somebody had started and they didn't finish. There's a lot of people who are doing that, and there's always an opportunity. So we found a lot, and this is not just the only time that we've done this, but we found a lot where somebody had bought the lot, developed the plans and put it together, spent a lot of money, and then they decided that it wasn't for them because they had too many other projects going. So we came in, bought it, and it was a good deal for us. So they lost a lot of money, but we were the only ones to buy it. And we turned it, and we actually doubled our money on our investment.
Okay. Yeah. And you feel bad for someone who's put the time and money into a property, but on the other hand, they're selling it. You're doing good work by buying the home that they're looking to sell, and they can get out of it and everybody can win. So that's great. Try to find properties that have already had some work done to them and take them from there. We've funded a number of properties like that.
I do feel we're coming into an opportunity over the next 12 to 24 months. So I think there's going to be a lot of things to be found, a lot of deals.
Okay. And you mean the way the market is going? And
correct. Yes.
Just
I think we'll find deals, and you're going to be able to, people are going to be able to find some good buys and make some money. So the price has to adjust to the payment. Everything's based on a 30-day payment. So whoever's selling is got to adjust to the market, which matches what people can pay. And we're talking about the retail buyer who would live in the house, but at the same time, for the investors who are going in, when the price adjusts, and here's a concept. Let's say that a house is worth 400, now it's worth 300,000 because the market's adjusted. because the interest rates have gone up. The payment on that house at 300 is the same as it was before when the interest rates were lower. So say the investor picks it up at 300, he puts 25,000 into it at the higher rate, and let's hope that maybe in 2 years those rates come back down. He cash flows it now, and in 2 years he refinances it, and he's got a better cash flow.
Absolutely. And I think the consensus is interest rates probably staying where they are for a while, probably not going up too much, but eventually coming down, which will help all the investors with their appreciation and cash flow in the years to come. So, hey, thank you very much, Scott. I want to tell everybody Scott is actually leaving for Montana in a few minutes and agreed to do this interview right before he left. So I'm so appreciative of that, Scott. Really thank you for that. That's great. And enjoyed having you on today. Great to see you. And let's do some business together soon.
Sounds good, Dave. Great talking to you. Take
Thanks.
care.
You too.